This is Mark Belton, SuperTraining.tv, Super Training Gym, the strongest gym in the West. And we have a very special guest today, Chris Duffin, who just blasted up an 850-pound squat in our gym today. Great to have you here.
Glad to be here.
We're doing a Q&A. I threw up a question on Instagram and also on Facebook. And we're going to rip through some questions that some of you may have had for my fat little self, but mainly for Chris here. First question is kind of a two-part. I guess we'll start with part number one is what's the deal with all the tattoos, and is there some sort of inspiration behind them, or you just start marking yourself up?
I wanted to look like a Viking king. No. Seriously, the most recent one is this dragon that circles my upper body, and I've had a lot of questions on that. That's called an Ouroboros, and it's from Northern European mythology. And it fits a lot of my life philosophy.
I follow so much of that.
So, but it's basically a dragon or a snake that's eating its tail, and it's meant to be the continual renewal of life, new beginnings, like making yourself new today.
Right.
And that fits a lot of my philosophy in life, is
deep shit.
To be continually reinventing yourself and
deep squats and deep thoughts. I like it.
Yeah.
So the second part of this is what's the deal with all the shirtlessness all the time?
Oh, I look dead sexy.
Yeah, I know. Seriously, people, what kind of question is that? The guy's shredded. The guy's, 250 pounds, 240 pounds?
It's somewhere in there.
His nutrition coach is not allowed to know how much he currently weighs, but he weighs some catastrophic amount above 220 pounds. But yeah, I mean, when you're jacked and you're tan and you're ripped and you got veins popping out everywhere, why bother with clothes, really, just in general?
Exactly. But in all seriousness, there is a reason. So
I'd like to hear this. Get a little closer.
So it's part of, in some of the other interviews, we touched on my nervous system disorder, the lack of feeling pain with tendons, bone breaking, things like that.
Sounds
and crazy. Actually, so I basically don't sweat either, and my body doesn't regulate temperature very well at all. So I overheat rapidly, and so training is that's an unpleasant part of training for me. So basically, anytime I start moving, I'm overheating.
Basically, Chris is a little different. He's made out of something different than the rest of us. Our lifter, Chris Ramos, who has successfully hit a 705 squat in competition, I think at like 198 or some shit like that. Huge squatter himself. He hit Chris while Chris was kind of getting ready to get underneath the bar for a squat, and he had to kind of do a retake and hit him again because he was like, that feels like steel.
He hit me?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, I didn't.
You'll have to get
notice.
him back. You'll have to get him back.
Notice.
Yeah, but he hits you, and he feels like one of the pillars of the monolift. Never seen anything like that in my life. Let's get to some other questions. Let's see what else we got here. I don't know how to read, so I'm the perfect person to read these off. This is great. Let's see. What's a good one? How much HIIT is recommended to promote fat loss with inhibiting muscle growth? You do any HIIT style training?
I have done a fair amount in the past, and so I do have recommendations on that. I just haven't had the time to really fit it into my training recently.
Right.
But I recommend high intensity interval training, basically not to exceed 12 minutes at one time. So you want to be in 8 to 12 minutes of total work. So if you're like 50% on, 50% off, you're looking at basically a 16 to 24 minute session total.
Right.
And I like to do it in waves. So if you think about a classical like 5 or 6 week training cycle, your first 3 weeks you would hit like 3 or 4 HIIT sessions a week. And then the second 3 weeks of your 6-week training cycle, that's the time that you're trying to advance your weights and beat your PRs over the previous 3 weeks, and you just taper it down. So instead of 3 sessions, you do 2 sessions, then 1 session, then 0 sessions the 6th week. And you should see a nice strength bump, and then you restart again. And that way you can make progressive advancements in your cardiovascular health, reduce fat, but not just completely burn yourself out. And you're basically matching it to your strength cycle. A lot of people just want to keep hitting it. And if you cycle it or wave it in that fashion.
So is the conditioning, everyone wants to talk about fat loss, but is the conditioning a huge element to strength gains as well?
So you have to have work capacity.
Right.
to be able to optimize your strength training, right? If all you can do is come in and just get your squats in and not get the work in,
Right.
how's that going to affect you as a whole for making strength gains?
Right.
So it's important to do that. It's to have a level of work capacity. So you can
Recovery
actually,
purposes.
yeah, so you can
being able
actually
to handle
go and
more.
train. So the more work that you can do, the more stimulus you're going to get for.
This is really strange. I think I'm starting to hear this from multiple people. Louis Simmons used to talk about GPP. Stan Efferding came here and talked about it. Maybe some of you kids out there should listen up and start doing some of this stuff. Right now, you train every day as well.
I call it work capacity training. That's
Right.
just like I try to think about it as, my overall work capacity. How do I develop that and get that higher?
Right.
So.
And currently, you told me you're just training every day. Something you mess with.
That's what I'm doing right now.
Right.
So I'm playing around with that. I recover better than most people, honestly. So it's not that necessarily a recommendation at this point.
Right.
A lot of my training stuff, unless I've had the time to test and prove it, I usually don't write articles about it or speak about it because I don't want to be the flavor of the month. I want the content that I put out needs to be proven. So what I'm doing right now is just I'm in the test phase. So. But yes, I am basically training 6 to 7 days a week at the moment.
What else we got? What made you want to start powerlifting?
I was in the gym, and there was a couple guys training for a bodybuilding show, and they were ginormous.
Right.
And I would run circles around them every day we were in the gym, and I'm like, what the heck? so I'm like, I'm gonna just go do a competition, bench press. I was a bencher at that time. I'm like, I'm gonna go do a bench press competition.
Wrong with that.
And I looked, and it was a bench press and deadlift competition. So I'm like, well, what's a deadlift? So I figured that out.
Right.
And so I went and did it. And this was in 2000. And it was supposed to just be a one-time thing. And I went to it. And at the end of the day, I went, well, I'm doing that for the rest of my life. So.
Right. Very cool. I got a question from a fan and a friend of ours, Omar Isuf. I know you're listening out there, Omar Isuf. He said, what are the best things that I learned from Chris Duffin and vice versa? So I'll start. The things I've learned from Chris so far in this visit is his passion and dedication to the sport. And when we did a lot of bench pressing yesterday, we went through multiple sets of bench press. We worked up heavy. Then we took the weights down quite a bit. We worked on form and technique. I put him through some rest pause method. And once we were done with that, that wasn't enough for Chris. Chris is like, hey, you know what? I'm kind of big through here, and I got this and that going on. It's okay size-wise and can probably help me get to the next level, but I need to slap some size on the front delts, and I need to. He kept expressing, not that he wanted to. He kept saying the word need. I need to. He kept saying that over and over again. And that was kind of the theme of the week that I've seen from you, and that I've learned from you is, just his dedication and his passion. While other guys are leaving the gym, he's still over there doing set after set after set, making sure he's getting his work in. We put Chris through some more shoulder stuff, and even after that, the conversation was, I said, hey, when you're doing this stuff, in your head, when you're doing these front raises and doing these various movements, think of 501, because that's usually a kilo number that you run into in a contest. He said, 501's not good enough. He said 501 is a thing of yesterday. He's like, I need to think, what was the number, 530, 540?
540, yep.
540, it was in his head. And then he got down for the lift, and he was thinking 540. That's the kind of tunnel vision and the precision it's going to take if you ever want to try to scratch the surface of some of the things that this guy's done. What have you learned from Chris Duffin?
What I've learned from Mark is to be less risk averse, to go after the things in life that you want to do and just figure out a way. And that's definitely been something that I try to do, but I think Mark exemplifies that. What he's done with super training, the slingshot, the podcasting, everything. It's like he's built a life for himself and those around him. Right. Just by doing what he wants to do, what he's passionate about and loves to do. and that's something to learn from.
Very cool. And when Stan Efferding was here, I was floored by what he said. He said, if you got the dedication to wake up at certain hours, you got the dedication to squeeze in all your meals and to manipulate your body and to get these enormous strength gains and work towards being a world record holder, that he said within several years you should be able to be a millionaire. And the point was just that the dedication and the work capacity
Right.
is already in place. So not anybody can do it, but anybody can do it. Let's see, what do we got going on here? What the hell's next? People want to know why you squat so high, why you squat so wide. What have you found to be some of the best shoulder stretches? I know that before we start that, Chris was big into kind of stretching his shoulders before a squat workout, which is not commonly done, not commonly even thought of. So talk about that a little bit.
It's not necessarily stretching the shoulders per se, but let's get back to basics here. I actually don't do a lot of what's called pure mobility or stretching work. It's really actually what we call achieving distal mobility with proximal stability. So a lot of times if you don't have stability here, that's actually what ends up shutting you down and getting you tight and losing mobility. So by fixing and resetting that, you can see some pretty phenomenal gains. I mean, yesterday or the day before, I worked with one of your athletes, Dave,
Yeah.
like
Big Dave, yeah.
10 inches away from touching his toes.
Zeus, you guys know him as Zeus.
So barely got past his knees. And
Right.
we did some stuff with the core, no stretching, went back, retest, he can touch his toes. So there's that. Now, like what we're talking about, opening up the shoulders, like I'm cueing basically scapular retraction before I get into squat. And the reason for that is I want to be in the perfect squat position. A lot of
Right.
people talk about, how erect I stay, what great bar position, all those things come into play.
Erect in the hole.
But it's not by happenstance. That's exactly what I'm trying to accomplish.
Right.
So I don't stretch my hips before I squat, but I stretch the things or cue the things to basically
Kind of like an activation.
yeah, exactly. So while I'm doing it, we did I've got some videos on it, but what's called an overhead RNT squat, reactive neuromuscular. And you're doing it, you don't feel that you're making
very,
any
very
change.
light. I think he was using like a mini band or something like that.
Yeah, almost lightest band I can find.
I think it's even less than a mini band.
So it's just enough just for it to cue the muscles back there to fire.
You're doing like an overhead squat.
Do an
type
overhead
of
squat. I work on having the core centrated while I'm doing it. And you walk away from it, you're like, well, I'm sweating really hard, but I don't feel like I really did a doorway stretch and opened up my pecs and shoulders, right? But if you walk up to the bar before you do that, and after that, all of a sudden you'll be like, whoa, I can get in super tight because the muscles are actually can engage, pull, and get in position. Then that allows me to get in that great squat position.
Right. Chris is somebody who's been wiped out by several big injuries, and he told me that he had shoulder pain for years. And what helped you get rid of that shoulder pain?
What helped me get rid of that shoulder pain is what I call the shoulder rock. And it's a classical device. It's a swinging device that I sell on my website, kabukiwarrior.com. But it's integrated with some cues from dynamic neuromuscular stabilization, basically integrating the shoulders into the core. So I invented this device, or a new take on this device,
right,
along with the cueing strategies that come with that product. I had shoulder pain for 8 years. And then after a month of using this was 2 years ago, in that fashion, I've had zero shoulder pain since that time.
What do you think is responsible for that? Like with the shoulder rock in particular, what do you think is responsible for pulling you out of pain?
So it hits on a number of different things. So a lot of people look at it when they see it and go, oh, that's a really great mobility movement. Well, yes, it's actively...
Or they might think it's just for your shoulder.
Right. So it's actively, allowing you to move through the entire range of motion.
Right.
So yeah, there's definitely some eccentric opening and stretching of the shoulder. But at the same time, you're actually cueing and firing all the muscles that support that shoulder girdle. And at the same time, doing that in a fashion where you've got the core integrated, plugged in together, and it's basically getting that shoulder talking with the core and working together. Basically, it's doing a reset. So you imagine your computer, if it's got an issue, sometimes you go hit the reset button and it fires up again.
Right.
So it's the same concept. Like we all learn to basically walk. We all learn in this process of, as a baby, you learn to roll over, then you learn to get into a crawl position, then you learn to stand up and walk. And there's all very basic fundamental ways that we move. And if you watch a baby, they all learn in the same manner.
They got their belly sticking out. They got
And then,
their wide stance. They kind of look like power lifters.
That's right. But, in society and all the other things going wrong with us sitting in chairs, using electronic devices, or in our world, doing open chain movement with a open chain movement with a non-centrated core. Basically what happens is the shoulder starts tightening up.
Right.
So you get what's called the frozen shoulder, and then we start gaining mobility in places that we shouldn't. Shoulder's a joint where we should have mobility. Elbow's a joint that is more of a fixed joint.
Right.
Spine, you've got mobility there to reach over and pick up things, but when it comes to load, this is actually not where we want to get mobility from. Right. So those things start going wrong, and so basically it's a method for hitting the reset button on that.
Right. What are some of the question on here? What are some of the more major injuries that you've had over the last several years?
The last couple years, I haven't had any major injury. So with a lot of these, refining these techniques and things, I've been getting away from that. But the thing is, I'm a pretty strong lifter. I push myself very hard.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to push the absolute limits of what your body is capable of, there's times that you're going to push past those boundaries. So I have hurt myself. But that doesn't mean I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to not getting injured, right?
Right.
But so last injury was 2 years ago. I tore my left adductor while squatting in a meet.
That was the fall, a pretty good fall that you had, right?
Pretty nasty fall. It's an ugly video. Several years before that, I was just being really stupid, letting my ego get in me. And after doing a very heavy bench session, I decided to walk over on the rings and do an iron cross and detach 2 heads of this pec right here. So those have been surgically reattached.
So you cannot do an iron cross.
I can do an iron cross, but only for about 2 seconds. And then the tendons don't stay attached to the bone anymore. Apparently at 250 pounds and never having done them before might be a bad idea. So
not recommended.
Not recommended. And I've had surgery on both elbows, so that's actually a result. We talked about the shoulder pain. I had really, really horrible shoulder mobility. And so, the body's trying to find mobility somewhere, trying to find stability.
Right.
So, the biceps basically got tight, and we're pulling on that elbow joint, decentrated it, and basically just blew out my elbows. They were just worn. Cartilage is shot,
right.
Bones shot. You think about a big, nice, loose ball and socket there slapping around.
Right.
So some of the major ones. Because of this, I've also detached this head of this bicep, which we, in an unusual case, decided not to reattach it, which normally you would. But because my elbows are in such bad shape, this actually makes my normal everyday life a little easier because I don't need that extra strength for my life. It's the one bicep is plenty fine enough, but it actually loosens up that joint a little bit.
Gotcha.
So my elbow is actually going to last longer. So I kind of sacrifice a little bit in the lifting so that I can, function a little better.
We have a question here about box squats. Somebody says, how often do you throw in box squats? And then let's just kind of talk about them in general. So how do you utilize box squats, let's say, for yourself? And then also, are they utilized in your gym for particular purposes and reasons?
So we utilize box squats in Elite Performance Center quite a bit, especially with newer lifters as we're teaching. We teach spinal stabilization first, but then, as you move from that, we start teaching how to hinge at the hips. A box squat is a great way to over-exaggerate that motion,
right.
And so that you can really teach people to do that and then really work on hip firing patterns. So we use it as a tool when we see, assess and go, hey, there's an opportunity here. And particularly with people, until they learn how to be able to maintain control and not have flexion in their back. So that's a nice way to control a new lifter to say, this is the depth that you're going to squat to until you're able to squat deeper safely.
Right,
so we do that, and then we have a number of lifters that will program it into their cycle in classical fashions. For myself, I really don't use them much anymore. because I'm very proficient in my squat, and I don't really see it doesn't really fit into my program. So I find I vary my training with other ways. So it's probably been a couple years since I've really done any box squats. Right. Not saying they're not valuable. We use them quite a bit, but it's, you've got to look at what your training is and what you actually need from your training. And, at this point, they're not a thing that adds value to where my weaknesses are and what I need to develop.
There's a lot of questions on here, pertaining mainly to pain. Because a lot of the videos that you shot, where you're talking about mobility and activation type stuff to keep you out of pain and to keep you healthy, and some of the warm up stuff you shared with Mike and I. What I would suggest to you guys is that you start to follow his YouTube closely, because he goes over a lot of this stuff, and then I would start throwing up questions on his YouTube channel, which is
Kabuki07.
Kabuki07, and then hopefully he can kind of communicate, because we're not going to be able to get to. There's hundreds of questions.
So I've got on that. I have my YouTube channel set up in playlists, so you can go through and find coaching videos, and then I've got me. It's all laid out so that you can easily find it. But you want to go in and find the coaching series, and there's. I can't tell you how many hours worth of content going through a lot of this stuff. So it helps people be able to find that. Oftentimes I'll have articles that go with them. So if you look in the description, you'll be able to link to an article that's either on my blog or on my coaching page on EliteFTS.com, because there'll be articles with that as well. But I'm always looking for feedback so that I can go, what do people need?
Right.
And what's going to be the next videos.
Yeah. And if you are going to ask a question, I would suggest that you kind of take your time with it. Write out a good question so that he sees that you kind of put time into it, and he'll have a better understanding of that this is probably a good topic, rather than just throwing out something real quick saying, I got knee pain, what do I do? Try to be a little bit more specific, and it will probably hit a larger base of people. We're just going to do a couple more minutes, because I know we're already going pretty long here. So again, a lot of these things are related to pain. Check out his YouTube. There's tons of information on there. One guy has a question. I'm not sure if it could be answered quickly. He ends up tilting during the squat. We see this quite a bit, but can be multiple reasons for it. Any quick fixes for it?
If you're tilting to the side, I would really play around with like some farmer's walks. So you want to work on that, and side planks. You want to, how are you going to address those things? So you've got some side-to-side stability. Those are a couple really useful tools to manage that.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Patella tendonitis.
No quick answer on that one.
Yeah, just way too much involved. The way the person walks, the type of shoes they wear.
You definitely want to, and you definitely, if you've got that, you want to see a practitioner in your local area.
Is ice effective?
Ice is very effective for pain management. For healing, generally I like to see heat. Okay. And movement. We want to see good, clean movement. It actually, it's one of the best ways to heal things. So that's often how I go about helping people recover, is actually finding what's dysfunctional in the movement, getting good, clean movement, and doing it multiple times a day. So it may be goblet squats, Bulgarian split squats, things like that, where we're doing that, combining that with heat. Those are going to be pretty effective strategies. But rest is not what you want.
Right.
So you don't want to work into pain. So you want to work kind of on the edges, the peripheral of pain, but not go into it. So we don't want to push into it. But if you're working that and then continually bumping that a little bit further, that's how we heal.
What should some people do, when they are injured? I'm just talking in a very, very general fashion, and I'm talking about bumps and bruises from training, elbow tendonitis and things of that nature. What's some just good general advice? You have some tips that you usually throw out to people when they start saying, "Oh man, I can't do pull-up. I can't." They start listing out the X amount of things they can't do.
So one of the things is, you've got to find what's dysfunctional with the movement. I mean, that's how we make gains. If we've got good, clean movement and we add progressive load onto it, we make gains over time. When we're injured or have nagging stuff, that holds us back. So you've really got to take a dig in and find out what's going wrong. And a lot of the times, you need to chase it a little bit further. So I've got this elbow issue, right? Well, it wasn't because of, for me, it wasn't because of this. It was because of this, which was because of this, right? So you may need some help finding somebody. Rehab2performance.com is a great place to provide both find people that from the clinical base or sports trainers that have a background in some of the concepts that I go through and talk about. So it's a great resource because sometimes you need that help for somebody to help you walk down the path. But usually what we've got is where you're experiencing pain is a result of your compensation somewhere else.
Right.
And you need to find that compensation and fix that.
Right.
And then you'll find relief to where it's at.
I always suggest to people too, stop concentrating on the 3 to 5 things that you can't do, and find a couple of things that you can do.
Absolutely.
Write those things down. Like, it's important. Like, don't just have it in your head. Write those things down and try to get to them as much as possible. And if you're able to, let's say you can't sumo deadlift because it tweaks your knee, but you can squat. Well, in your squats, maybe in your warm-ups and stuff, just with the barbell or even just with body weight, try to move back and forth in the squat. Try to get some good movement, as Chris is talking about here. Start to work into some different lunge positions and find some different things. You're going to find something that tells you the story of what's going on with your knee.
So absolutely. And the other thing, and I'm going to steal this. This is from Dr. Charlie Weingroff, but it's looking at the difference between how do you lateralize versus regress. So instead of I can't squat, I'm going to move back and not squat or just not do anything.
Right.
How do I lateralize? What can I do that is going to move my squat forward?
Right.
And because there's a lot of things that you can go, oh, hey, I've got no pain doing this. And actually, if I spend 3 months like kicking ass and making this better, my squat's going to go up, even though I'm not necessarily can't squat.
You blow out a shoulder, what would you do? You hop on a safety squat bar.
Exactly.
Right?
So that's
something that you can still do.
And that's what we call lateralization. So I think too many people let the excuse hit them, and I can't do that, instead of figuring out some other way around that. How do you can still move forward,
right,
while you're dealing and fixing that issue?
And there's so many different ways to move, and there's so many different methods out there. Chris here was having a real hard time with any sort of overhead press, and again, he wanted to really get a focus in on his delt, and I just kind of suggested to him, well, let's use a little bit of bodybuilding strategy to really get in there deep. And so let's pre-fatigue it with several different shoulder type of movements. And then if you do any form of overhead, or even if it's a high incline or of some sort, it can be done with a very light weight but still be highly effective. So yesterday when he was done with his bench workout, I had him doing, he was on an incline and he was doing front raises, just sitting on the incline regular, and then we faced him the other way and he just did them that way. We even added in some overhead shoulder presses in the rack, where he's kind of scraping the barbell against the rack so you can kind of press this way rather than trying to be way back in here. There's always a way.
Yep.
Somebody wants to know how to fix overextension, which that can be a long story as well. But
so overextension, that's definitely something that we want to avoid. Now, there's going to be things like where we're bench pressing and things like that where it's part of it, and so we want to manage or mitigate that elsewhere. But overextension happens if we don't have good stability in the core. So I have some great videos on this. So I don't think we need to go into this, but I've got numerous videos on bracing and breathing strategies that if you incorporate that's going to give you the stability that's going to stop that overextension.
One thing I noticed that helps with a lot of the lifters here is simply to kind of brace downward, as he's talking about. It's not as simple as that. It's a lot more complicated than that. He's the man when it comes to that. He's going to tell you how to breathe and all those different factors. But one simple thing to get you out of overextension is try not to overarch your lower back when you're lifting, and also just try to bring your eye line down a little bit. If you're looking up like this and you're overextending, try to bring your eye line down a little bit. You might have to even look straight at the ground. It's going to be different for each person. Let's just hit up one more and then we will be done. Let's see. The duck question, that's always in there.
The duck question?
Yeah, the would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck?
I have no freaking clue. I don't want any parts of duck fights.
Yeah, it sounds dangerous. Let's see. Favorite whiskey? Good way to end it.
All right. Right now it's Willet Reserve. I've got some.
He's sponsored.
No, I'm not sponsored by them.
Oh, I'm so sponsored.
But I've got a very nice gift given to me recently of some Jim Beam and a sherry cask special reserve that I'm looking forward to cracking open. This right here that Matt Vincent left was
Thank you, Matt
incredibly
Vincent.
good. Blanton's, the original single barrel bourbon whiskey. So, so anyway, bourbon whiskey is definitely my recommendation.
There you
so
go.
if you want to get into bourbons, that's the way to go. But
Lastly, I had a bunch of guys asking you questions about your intra-workout. You were mixing up this and that, and you were drinking different things. So, give us some basics on that concoction. What's it doing for you?
Okay, so there's a lot of there's actually stolen from the bodybuilder side of the world. So a lot of bodybuilders are doing this.
This guy steals, he cheats. I mean, the list of things go on and on. Knee wraps, belts, monoliths, wide squats.
So anyway, I use a combination of highly branched cyclic dextrin, PeptoPro, leucine, some electrolytes.
These are all things that are going to digest rapidly.
So basically, you're fueling your muscles as you're training, as you're breaking them down. And so especially with very high volume. So if you're just coming in and just doing a heavy lift, it's not going to be, you're not really going to notice much from it. But if you're doing like frequent high volume training, that sort of thing like I'm doing, you're going to notice a pretty significant improvement in your recovery. It's something that I've been doing for a couple years, and we're finding just more recent change. That was like 6 months ago, switching to the use of the highly branched cyclic dextrin, which has taken it a step further. Usually I've got creatine mixed in there as well. So that's
Awesome,
that's
man.
it.
It's just an honor to have you here. It's been awesome. We really appreciate the time and effort that you put into helping us with some of these videos and helping some of my lifters. It's not always that the lifters always hang out and always want to talk to whoever we have around, but they were really excited to have you here. So we appreciate all the help, my man. And
Been a good time.
Good luck with everything, and just go ahead and plug your website and your Instagram and stuff like that, and we'll be out of here.
Okay, kabukiwarrior.com. So that's KABUKI warrior.com. Instagram Kabuki_strong. Twitter Kabuki Strong. And Facebook Chris Duffin, coach athlete, or just Chris Duffin. You can find me on there, but I think it's full.
He also writes for Power Magazine. Look at that.
Power Magazine, Elite FTS. Look under coaching logs, Chris Duffin. So you'll find both articles and coaching on there, training videos on there.
Strength is never a weakness, and that is it from supertraining.tv.